Hello to all of my parishioners. That's right. If you listen to or watch this podcast, and that's what I'm calling you now, you a parishioner. On this episode, I have Hajar Woodland. Hajar and I met at Soho Theatre during a writing camp. And, the thing is, we didn't really speak that much. I mean, we've gigged together since, we've had a couple of conversations, but we don't know each other that well. So it was really great talking to her during this episode and getting to know more about her. And I feel like we're kindred spirits. There's a lot of things that we have as similarities in the terms of the way we think, our upbringing, our views of the world. And so this episode is really interesting. Probably the longest episode I've done so far, but we had so much to talk about. And honestly, I could have spoken to her for another 30 minutes, maybe even another hour. But all podcasts have to end at some point, and this is not Joe Rogan. So, we got to keep it moving. If you enjoy these episodes, if you are enjoying these podcasts, please like, subscribe, tell a friend, leave a review. Tell me you enjoy it, because that always helps. I need the encouragement. It definitely helps me to record these. But listen, enough of the begging. It's time for me to get into the episode. So here is Hajar Woodland. So today in the studio, I have Hajar J. Woodland. Hajar, how are you doing today?
Hello, I am good. Mellow-ish today.
Mellow-ish.
And a little bit ill, so hopefully you don't get a cold.
Hey, don't worry, man. I think I've been taking so many supplements and vitamins recently. It's like my new age thing. Mm-hmm. It's like as I've gotten older, I'm like, right, I'm just vitamin me up.
AG1 Joe Rogan kind of.
I haven't gone that far yet, but he is. Every time I hear that advertisement, I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need some of that AG. Hey UK, AG1.
AG1 Athletic Greens.
But no, welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Eulogise Me. Thank you very much for agreeing to be on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. I always ask my guests, when you first were asked to write your own eulogy, how did you feel about that?
Oh, terrible. Yeah, when you said, you need to write your own eulogy, I was like, oh, maybe this isn't for me. This takes a lot of effort and there's a lot of vulnerability because there's a massive amount of ego and ego suppression balancing themselves out. So you're like, well, what would I want people to think of me? What do I think they will think of me? What would be the less arrogant way of looking at it? What are all my personal regrets and everything? And you just end up down some lot. It's quite dark. It's really quite dark, isn't it? When you and also you're thinking about when am I going to die? So I did my eulogy as if it was sort of like quite near future.
Okay, there's a lot to unpack right there.
I'm like, I don't want to die near future. I would like to die, like old lady Titanic kind of thing.
Yeah.
But just telling lots of horny stories.
Yeah.
To
your grandkids.
Not to my grandkids. I was going to say grandkids. I'm not going to have kids, but like to my niece and nephew's grandkids. Bless them. I will. Yeah.
Aye. Well, I mean, already you've kind of hit on a few points that are in the eulogy that I am going to talk to you about throughout the podcast. So if you're listening right now and you're like, I want to know more about that or why that, then stay tuned. Mm-hmm. We're gonna touch on a lot of all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. How would you describe yourself, and how did we come to know each other?
How would I describe? Oh, can I start with how we came to know each other?
Yeah, sure.
So we
start with the easier option.
Start the easy one. It was Soho Theatre, wasn't it? We did the Comedy Plus Labs.
Right.
So that was 2022, I think, summer 2022. Yeah,
wow.
I just moved to Woking.
Yeah. It was.
And I had no comedy or anything in my life, and actually my friend encouraged me to apply because I just thought, you know what, because you meant to have done 30 gigs to get onto that, and I'd actually probably only done like 14 comedy ones, but I'd been a singer for like 15 years. So
plus they'll never know.
Yeah, I did tell them that. But yeah, I felt like confident enough at that point. I was like, anyway. But yeah, that's how we met. I'm trying to think of I can't even remember my first impression of you. You seemed very like bold and assured, very, very articulate and very, very intelligent. Wow. And that was my first kind of.
In that case, I wear the mask very well.
You had a lot going on. Like there was like so much going behind the eyes, and yeah, you had a lot to contribute to the course, I think, as well.
Cool. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no. So that was first impression.
That's our origin story, really,
Yeah.
in terms of how we met. Because that's the same with myself. I would have said the same from Soho, from the Soho comedy course, and very, very bubbly, very, very energetic. And what I liked about you on the course was that you just went for it.
Yeah, I really did. There was, oh my God. Thing is, this is the problem with like comedy. Where you're trying stuff out and you're trying stuff out and it probably won't work and it's a risk. And that people in the room will be looking at you like, is she okay? And you're like, yeah, I'm fine. But I just need to try this out. Like I did a gig once. It was like just at Cavendish and Cavendish Arms. And I think, bless her, it was Sakisa. And I don't think she remembers that this is how we first met. But I was very much in the mindset of you're going to be shit for your first few years. So just be shit and don't worry about it. So I was just trying stuff out, trying persona out, trying however I looked. And I looked like I just lost the will to live when I first started doing my comedy gigs. I looked terrible. And I was basically just reading out ideas. And afterwards, I got like a fine muted round of applause or whatever. And Sakisa went, oh, it's hard being first up. And I'm like, I'm fine. Like, I'm a grown-ass woman. Don't worry about me.
Oh, that's the
And I know she meant it in such a nice way.
Yeah.
Because you're dealing with a room of people who are just trying it first time. It's the first time on stage. But because I'd had that stage, like performing background, at least in singing, I was under no illusions that I was going to be good. I wasn't trying to be good.
Right.
Mind you, it did take a bit of a shift where I was like, you should probably try and be good now. This is the time. What was I saying?
But
bubbly and energetic.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to, and that's comedy, but also that's a metaphor for life.
Yeah.
You got to swing, and sometimes you're gonna hit, sometimes you're gonna miss, but you got to swing.
I think I did a load of like really dark stuff, and Lee afterwards like, yeah, and there will be stuff that you need to make sure that you've processed first. All I do is process this.
Oh man. But yeah, I mean, those are like first impressions of each other, and when I first met you. And when I say like, how would you describe yourself? Not in terms of like, you don't have to think totally introspective, but I tend to be like, Hajar, or this person is a comedian, or this, or this, or this. But I'm just curious, like, how would you describe yourself, whether it be creatively or just like in general? That's all right. I'll edit this podcast.
Yeah, here is a range of sounds. In terms of what I do for work, I am kind of a freelance everything. So I'm like a creative, trying to be a creative. A reluctant creative. I've never described
I'm already challenging you. I'm like, no, creative. Let's just go creative.
Yeah, literally, it was only been about 4 years ago. And again, it was my friend Jules, who's works at Soho Theatre. She, which I need to stipulate, has nothing to do with me getting on that course. But she was the first person to actually start describing me as a creative when I was talking about just stuff in my day or how my brain was working. She was like, it's normal, you're a creative. And no one had ever called me that before. I'd never seen myself as that because I was quite academic at school. And then I was, I did quite a load of serious jobs around being a singer while trying to be a writer. I never saw myself as that. I always thought I was a bit too boring. I was never artsy like the arty people. I never felt free enough to be creative.
I think sometimes we can really put a dampener on our own, or a dimmer on our own light. I really think that that's just something we do often as human beings. And, I'm hold my hands up. I'm guilty of it myself. And I said I actually said it to my girlfriend recently. I said to her that often when you shine brightly, other people see it, but you don't really realize it because you're shining, you're giving off the light. So you don't really have a moment to just look back. I wasn't talking about myself when I was saying this to her. No.
You're like, I don't think you realize.
I'm so bright that the thing is, I just don't realize it. I was actually bigging her up. But, sometimes that's the case. And until you start to acknowledge the light that you have and that you carry, and then also to be able to say, no, I am a creative. I am these things and more.
Yeah, and I think I'm stepping into that a bit more now. So literally it was a few months ago I finished my last proper work contract, and I've been doing bits and bobs since then, but I kind of made a commitment to myself. I wrote like a letter, like a 2-page letter of like, this is what you're going to do, and I have to look at it to remind myself to stay focused on just exploring music and singing and songwriting and comedy and trying to think of this solo show I'm working on. So that's like the main North Star. And also going back to singing properly full time, because I sort of stopped singing after pandemic, just ruined everything, just threw everything off kilter. and I was trying to like fit myself back into a 9-to-5 thing, and I never even saw myself as a singer, and I was a professionally paid singer. 2-3 times a week I would sing and get gigs for 10-15 years, and I never saw myself as a singer until lockdown, when all my gigs went, until just before, and so now I'm like going back to that and being a singer. Anyway, how would I describe myself? Talkative.
Perfect for podcasting, might I say.
Talkative, energetic. I miss getting passionate about things. Like I'm a naturally passionate person, and I get passionate about people. Like when I like people, when I love my friends so much. You know, and I don't know, like, you know, when you can really notice when you've lost your passion, or just your general sense of passion for life.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
It's often in the absence of, I don't know, friends nearby you and all that sort of thing. But I used to really care about so much, and I don't know whether I'm at a phase of like caring a little bit about fewer things, so I can care a bit more about important things. But yeah, I'm trying to rediscover feeling passionate. I've been feeling passionate about my own creativity, feeling passionate about the ideas I have, because everything, I think, my whole life has been, especially like my childhood and a lot of stuff replicated in my 20s, has just been about, oh, well, that's not so special, singers. Even my ex-husband was like, well, singers are 10 a penny, and like just loads of things like that. We go, oh, okay, yeah, there's absolutely nothing special.
Right.
But also remembering that we are all tiny, tiny, tiny dots in the universe. So how do you like? How do you care just enough?
I feel like the fact that we are those tiny dots in the universe, and the fact that we are actually here experiencing this, is special, and is what actually makes us special. You know what I mean? Yeah. But sometimes, you know, there's all it takes is an off-kilter comment, and it can definitely, like, you know, destroy our confidence in that regard.
And especially if those comments are basically so ingrained in you that you are making the comments before anyone else can.
100%.
And I think part of how I was raised, this is why such a simple question. How would you describe yourself? I don't know. I can't be arrogant, but it was, if you didn't come up with the insult for yourself, someone else would. Right. So I was raised in a very teasing household. We would constantly be taking the piss out of each other, and not necessarily in a nice way. Yeah. Everything was a joke, which in a way can lend itself to being a comedian. But if you deigned to have the arrogance to think there was something good about you, but someone had spotted a negative trait in it or a flaw in it, you'd feel that the shame and the humiliation would be so great. So I had to, it's like if anyone gives me a compliment, I have 10 negative things ready, because I'm like, oh, you probably noticed all the other bad things about me, so I need to get in there first so I don't feel ashamed and humiliated. Right. So it's quite a deep, dark kind of thing that goes beneath everything, where you see all this light, and when I feel really light and I feel like I love who I am and I love some of my personality and the friends I have and all this kind of thing, but actually there's these layers of don't be a fool by thinking for too long that there's something good about you, which is really crazy. It makes me feel sound desperately insecure, but I'm not. But
it's also and the thing is, it's something that you've programmed into yourself because of certain things growing up and etc. So
just light stuff, to be honest.
No, I feel like we've touched on so much, and we haven't even read your eulogy yet. So as you must know by now, this is the podcast where I invite my guests to write and read their own eulogy on the pod. So with that being the case, Hajar,
okay,
it is over to you to read your eulogy.
Oh my gosh, right, let's Hajar lived as she died, with potential and clutching her phone. A naturally gifted singer, writer and funny woman, she could have been many things had she picked one path and persevered. She could have been a singer had she learnt music theory and practised from an early age. She could have been an author had she finished even one of her 4 draft novels. She could have been a millionaire had she realised she had ADHD sooner and doped herself into being a highly driven corporate bitch. She never quite made it as a comedian, and her debut hour remained a 45-minute work in progress with a few half-written songs, but we've seen some of the clips, and they're fine. Definite potential. What Hajar lacked in direction, focus and fulfillment, she made up for in soul, humour and a dedication to wasting her life on social media. She was a hopeless romantic, but never learnt how to pour herself fully into it. While she could be a bitter lemon who played history on repeat in her brain, no one could hurt her so much that she wouldn't forgive them if they apologised. And even then. Her motto for life was to act from a place of power, not fear, and she lived fearlessly in micro moments when she'd throw herself into situations with abandon, but she struggled to do the same with the bigger building blocks of her life. She loved her niece and nephew so much she decided not to have children, believing that any child of hers would only be a disappointment in comparison. She died being dragged along the underground track by a Central Line train, her least favourite of all tube lines, as she was leaning over to get a closer look at a mouse. Luckily, this meant she avoided living through her greatest fear, which was reenacting the Divine Comedy song, A Lady of a Certain Age. Not that she ever had the opportunity to marry for money and live in the south of France. Her greatest joy was dinner with friends. She took everything too seriously except her own happiness. She never conquered her minute-by-minute need for validation and dopamine, and the questions that were a permanent backdrop to her life were, am I okay, and am I doing this wrong? Hajar was a lot of fun. She just doesn't sound like it on paper.
First things first, may I say, one of the best eulogies I've heard so far on the podcast.
Oh, well, thank you.
Right? So well written, beautifully read.
Thank you very much.
I mean, that was like beautifully read. I was like, geez, it's read as well as it was written.
I had a certain rhythm in my mind when I wrote it.
No, genuinely. And it had like I messaged you, didn't I? Yeah. And I said like, this is beautiful. This is like really honest and really raw. And it was also humorous. Like you got such a wonderful balance in there.
Thank you.
And you know, so for me, I'm like, it's so funny because I get down on myself so much, right? I really do. People say, oh, Roman, you're great. You're good at this. You're great at that, blah, blah. And I am like the same. I'm like you at times where I'm like, oh, I'm nothing. I'm rubbish. I'm crap. And just in that alone, I look at you and I'm like, oh, but you're a writer. You're like, you know what I mean? But I get it. Yeah. I get it. I don't know why we just have this thing in our heads where it's like, no, we're rubbish, we're crap, we're whatever. But genuinely, like that was.
I enjoyed it. It was, I'm trying to just do fun things. Like I love the concept of your podcast. As soon as I saw you post it, I was like, this is such a brilliant concept.
You were one of the first people to genuinely like give me any sort of positive feedback. Really? I appreciate that.
Well, no, I loved it. I think it was such a cool original idea, and I've listened to some episodes, and I think it's really, I love it. I also love that it does feed, did you have this thing of like feeding into this modern day narcissism? It's like, what do I think of myself, and what does the world think of me? And I know that's not what it is, but it's like, it's real kind of a time. I think it really feeds into it.
I think you are right. It definitely feeds into the idea of self. Yeah. And like questioning oneself and thinking of oneself, etc. And I guess I spend a lot of time I spend a lot of time thinking about myself, which I hate to say that out loud. Same, but
we're so similar, honestly. This is why you really stood out when we did the Soho Theatre thing. Yeah. When you see something in someone and they might not know that they've given you enough of themselves for you to like you might not have given enough for yourself, and you're like, he doesn't get how similar we are. Everything he puts out, I get it. I get it. And sometimes I see your social posts and they're like, I know what's underneath those. I don't know what it is. There's just something. And then I saw you did music as well. I was like, oh, there's so much.
I love that the I know what's underneath those because I'm like, there's definitely something underneath these, and if you get it, then you get it. But no, I definitely get where you're coming from, and like I hate to feel like I'm wrapped up in myself because I know that there's so much that other people are going through and other people are dealing with. And sometimes the best way to forget about yourself is to concentrate on others, which I find that this podcast helps me with because it's a moment where I take myself a little bit out of me and get to put on a priest's outfit.
Beautiful. But it is creativity as well. Like when you think of all the great writers and artists throughout history, they've all been a bit mental and self-involved. Yeah. And I think part of it is that maybe maybe it's those of us who are really moral or worried about being good people as well, that don't allow us to completely indulge in who we could be if we didn't worry about what people thought and whether we're acting good or bad.
That's such a valid point, That's such a valid point. And I think that it is that self-analysis and the feeling of sometimes like wanting to be a good person and wanting to do the right thing and analyze it and beating yourself up when you do the wrong thing. Oh, yeah. And it's like, oh my God, I knew I was worthless. This is proof, So it's all of that. But let me start with the eulogy from the point I want to jump off on is your phone and social media. Let's because you mentioned that you have ADHD. Yeah. So when did you get diagnosed with ADHD?
I got diagnosed officially, I think it was December 2021, I think.
Did you always feel like there was something that maybe you had it, or what was the situation?
I think I was really, really surprised. So there's a woman I follow called Marie Forleo, and she's this amazing business coach, sort of life coach woman. And it was during one of her, I think I did a copywriting online course, and during one of those courses she mentioned how she was ADHD, but she made it as like a really passing kind of thing. And she talks about being multi-passionate entrepreneurs, basically just embracing all the different things you can do. And it was when she said she was ADHD, I was like, well, if she is, then maybe I am. But I was always extremely high achieving at school, like straight A's all the way through, got really anxious if a grade fell. Really, I mean, coasted through uni, but then really struggled in like the real world. Always felt like there was something wrong with me. Always felt like I didn't fit. And I was super stressed throughout school as well. My working habits were like, I would wake up because I'd leave everything to last minute. It was very rare not to. But my history coursework, I think I woke up at 4:00 knowing that it was due in that day. I woke up at 4:00 to finish it by 8 a.m. and then I went to school.
Wow.
And
Talk about last minute.
But that was, but it became a process. And no one I remember sleeping. So we had a computer room was the dining room. So the computer was in the dining room, proper good old unplug the phone to get the internet to work, all that. And I remember sleeping in the dining room so I wouldn't wake anyone up. Because I think I still shared with my sister or something, sleeping in the dining room, I would have been 15, 16 to wake up to work at the computer to get my history coursework done. But I did this. I must have done it even at primary school.
So I guess realistically then, there were signs that there could be some degree of an ADHD diagnosis in the offing. But
because we only associated it with like boys and misbehaving boys, even though I exhibited all the signs when I was under 12, like very hyperactive and energetic, and was always told I was too loud. Too loud was a big thing. And strict Muslim family, it was like, who are you as a girl?
Not
you
to be loud.
Not be
silence.
Loud. Exactly, absolutely.
So the trigger for you to get diagnosed or to look into a diagnosis was this copywriting course you were doing. The lady
Marie Forleo,
said she was, and then
so she's like millions of followers. She's sort of does all the Tony Robbins-y kind of stuff
she's in that kind of world.
That kind of world, yeah.
And then how did you go about actually getting a diagnosis? I am conscious of the fact that I started this by saying social media, but I'm working my way around to it.
No, same. I mean,
I guess I'm saying that more for any listeners, because when I listen to podcasts, I'm always like, they started talking about that, and now they're talking about this. Are they going to go back to that? Because I really want to know about that. So if you're listening, I'm just letting you know, or you're watching, we're coming round.
As long as you bring it back,
around.
That's part of the gift, isn't it, of interviewing.
So you were saying like so I was asking in terms of the diagnosis, how did you go about getting a diagnosis?
So what was it? It was April when I first went to my GP or did it online. I can't remember what how exactly that process was. And I spoke to, again, my friend Jules told me that her friend had been diagnosed. So I looked at an Instagram post and they said that they went to Psychiatry UK because under like I can't remember what the NHS scheme is where you get to ask what sort of care you want. So I requested Psychiatry UK, and I think I had a Zoom call with the psychiatrist in the December, and that's when I got my diagnosis. You basically have to fill out a few online forms and get someone close to you to fill out a form as well. So my boyfriend filled out a form, and one of the things he was like, she's leaves the car, so I barely parked and she's opened the door and is running to the front door, and that's kind of like this urge. Like I'm driving, when I'm coming up to park, I have to remind myself not to take the keys out the car before I'm parked. Like I'm thinking of like
thinking far ahead
through everything, and the anxiety and the urgency to like luckily I haven't pulled out the keys while driving yet, but it could happen.
Good thing you're not a surgeon.
I mean, I did when I was 17 I did fill up my mum's car with petrol while my friends were in the car and the car was still on.
Oh wow.
Literally didn't even know. So a few things like that. But I think because I made so many mistakes when I was younger, I corrected so much that I think about 3 or 4 times before doing anything.
Got you.
Social media.
So you got that diagnosis. Your diagnosis being ADHD.
Sorry, I'm such a fidget.
That's all right. I'm also conscious of this because I did a mental health first aider course a little while ago. So I'm now a mental health first aider.
MHFA, well done.
Thank you very much. But they're very conscious of the terminology you use when you say, so like I just said, so you're diagnosed as being ADHD, and they were very big on saying, don't say like someone's being this or someone is this. Like for example, what's the other thing when people have I should remember this, not ADHD, but it's obsessive compulsive disorder. So OCD, and someone says, "Oh, I am OCD." Sometimes people refer to themselves as OCD, and it's like, no, you have OCD, but you are not the thing.
Yeah, that's interesting. I've seen two things about ADHD, so I've literally seen the opposite on ADHD.
Is it?
Yeah, they say, "Oh, I am ADHD," rather than "I have ADHD." So, which kind of makes no sense, really. And
because then it becomes an identity if you say I am a thing. But nevertheless, it was just something that popped into my head there when I was conscious of the terminology and how I was saying it. But bringing that back to social media, because I'm terrible on social media. I will scroll and then feel disgusted with myself and get angry and throw my phone on the ground, like on the bed, and be like, "What are you doing?" Yeah. And then 20 seconds later, I'm right back on the same app. It's a disease.
Should we compare? Should I screen time? Do you want to compare screen time?
Okay,
or you feel
all right.
more disgusted?
All right. What day is it? Today is Wednesday. So
my screen time has been even worse last week. It was so bad.
All right, we are. So basically, what we're doing right now, we're going through our phones, and we are basically just getting up our screen time.
What's terrible is this isn't even as bad as I thought it was, and it's really shocking.
Are we comparing daily average or?
Let's pick your highest day from last week.
How do you go to last week? I'm terrible with this.
You scroll along to the left.
I'll just scroll to the left.
Yeah.
I'm trying to scroll, but it's not.
So you got in screen time.
Yeah.
And then you scroll along there. So see your web app. There, that's it. See your web app.
Oh, okay. See your. Okay, got it.
Okay. So.
Okay, so highest day from last week. Yeah. All right. I'm picking my highest day from last week. Oh my gosh. Okay.
Friday, 29th of March.
Oh, funny. Yours was a Friday, right? Mine was a Saturday.
What was I doing Friday? But I think this also might. I was going to say I think it might include my laptop, but I don't know if it does.
Yours must be really bad. I mean, mine is bad.
This isn't even my highest from the last few weeks because Friday was 11 hours and 51 minutes.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm not too far behind you.
This is not a good thing.
I know this is not good.
What are you on?
I'm 9 hours and 42
wow.
minutes. I'm not too far behind you.
That's not bad. Okay, 3 weeks ago, I had like a crazy anxious day. But also, I was staying at a friend's house for a few days looking after a cat. And even though I don't really have big routine, I've realized that familiarity, it's really, a lack of familiarity is really bad for me. Like I crave kind of things to be different and exciting. But there was something about being in another house that, anyway, I was on my phone for 16 hours that day.
Wow. And that is because I must caveat this just to try and make myself feel better is 3 hours and 45 minutes of that is travel.
Okay.
So for me, that could have been ways.
Right. My 11 hours.
Probably was driving somewhere.
2.5 hours is travel.
2.5 hours is travel. Okay.
Okay. But social last week's. So if I show,
what's social looking like?
My total screen time last week was 50 hours and 37 minutes, and my social was my social 23 hours and 58 minutes.
It's
so I spent a day.
Time.
I spent a day. I did post some stuff.
But the thing is though, Hajar, you're not alone. Like the way you're talking like now, there are people out there who are probably double that. Like it's like so.
I don't think my boyfriend realizes I think I'd be a better person if I was going out shagging every night and just cheating. Like when you think of how bad it is for your brain, like I would spend so much less time. You're 15 minutes and you're done instead of like.
Father Harris could not condone that sort of behavior.
Isn't that crazy? Like the stuff that goes on in our brains. Like, what does this mean for us as who we are as human beings? We're spending all this time in our heads, on our phones. The internet knows so much more about me than anyone else in my life. like they could just recreate me, like in that Black Mirror episode.
Yeah.
Like all my friends and family would know nothing.
The scary thing is, like, it probably could and probably will, like, especially when it comes to like messaging, like the way that we talk, the way that we communicate, like just getting our cadence down.
Oh yeah, you can recreate that in a chatbot.
You know,
yeah,
that would be so. Yeah, it's scary to think what the future might become with those things. But with your social media usage, and like you mentioned that you feel as though you could have fulfilled more of your potential if it wasn't for social media.
So I remember years ago when I was 23, I went to, 15 years ago, I went to France to work on my memoir in a month. And I wrote 100,000 words that month. Like I had a great time, ate a lot. And at the time I was going through an argument with my brother and my sister-in-law, who I absolutely love. I don't think they'd mind me talking about it. I absolutely love them to pieces now. And I'm so proud of how we've navigated just being idiot people in their 20s. And I remember processing a lot of that stuff and writing it down a lot. And I remembered, I just remember writing something about, people who are on like online all the time are just lonely. I remember thinking about that very, very clearly. You're lonely. If you're online all the time, you are lonely. And I just remember that. Like I think social media, it is loneliness ultimately, because there's something you're not getting in your day-to-day connection, and something that is, lockdown and everything has accelerated for a lot of us. And all those stages in my life where I realized I was online and scrolling, I was just lonely. I don't actually know what's got to do with my brother and sister. Oh yeah, because I was writing about them and our relationship. Yeah. And I think if you can access where that loneliness is coming from, but I can't be asked.
That would take too much work.
Too much, right? Yeah.
Let's look at another TikTok
I
reel.
did therapy in my 20s. It's done. I can't be bothered now.
The funny thing is that I think you make a valid point with regards to that, because whenever I'm locked in with people, I'm doing something and I'm engaged mentally or socially, I find that I don't reach for my phone. A lot of time can go by and I'm not on my phone. I find actually my girlfriend, she's got a 6-year-old daughter, and when you're locked in doing things with kids and recreating stuff, or you have to be so present, and the phone, you just can't, and I'm very conscious of, if I'm locked in doing something and then take my phone out to look at something, I'm really conscious of how that comes across and what that would feel like and what that would be like to a child, to be like, oh, he's on his phone again, So I'm trying to be more mindful of that. But you're right. I think that there is a loneliness and there's a boredom, a loneliness and a boredom. Yeah. And I think us as humans, we've become pretty bad at being bored. Yeah.
It's a vicious cycle as well, because obviously the more you're on your phone, the more disconnected you are from people, and you just create that thing. And the more disconnected you are, the more you're on your phone. It's like, I need to make plans with people to get off my phone. That doesn't feel like the right way to go about life, does it?
No. I mean,
and it's like, I want to see my friends so I can stop being addicted. It's all a bit weird. And I do think lockdown has made a massive difference. And also there's part of it, which is, okay, do we accept that this is part of the world we're in? And to what degree do we accept that? But like my grandma, she told me that her dad was suspicious of the telephone. Like there is
right. Every generation is genuinely suspicious of the new technology, and we are living through this right now. And when when we get like old and the new generation come through, it's gonna be like VR, then it's gonna be implants in the brain, and it's probably gonna just keep going and going, and things just become the norm. But with another thing I want to touch on with you is perseverance.
Oh yeah.
Perseverance, because you make the statement of saying that you speak about it, you could have been a number of things had you persevered. And what would you say is, what stops you from persevering?
I think there's two things to it, because it's picking a path and persevering.
Yes.
And maybe that's going a little bit harsh on myself, because I've shown to myself that I can persevere with certain things. I can get things done. I think the end point just shifts. and I forget about. So, for example, I went to France. I wrote 100,000 words. Like I did that. I did it every day. I was just writing, and there's something that felt like that just wasn't quite enough, and I wasn't able to get to the next stage with that. But it was possibly what I needed to do at that point. With singing, the last month I have done singing practice like an hour a day, 6 days a week. Gym, like I've persevered with that for the last, but I have changed my goalpost a little bit. Like these are things where I don't have high expectations of myself. In terms of I think it's confidence. So for example, like in my 20s, if I'd gone, yeah, just write the book, you want to write this book, and it's everything kind of that you want to do, and it will lead to a different sort of life for yourself and blah, blah, blah. Don't know why I didn't persevere. I think I took enough of the negative stuff from people. There was a lot of stuff wrapped up in worry about it. And when I had a friend who was in publishing, and she was like, look, I honestly don't think you'll get this book published. And I kind of took that as like, okay, cool. And maybe she was right for that point in my life, but I could have turned it into something else. With the singing, I always loved singing, but I wasn't allowed to sing on stage as a kid. So it was...
Right. Because of your... is it because of your Muslim background?
Muslim background, and my dad was very, very controlling. And my mum, even she converted to Islam. She was sort of raised Christian, but she converted. And our whole family was just like, don't draw attention to yourself as a woman. And of course, what drawing attention to yourself means, is different to every single person who looks at you. It's like everything I did was drawing attention to myself. Like I said, as a young kid, I was always told I was too loud. And singing was part of a woman's aura, the thing that you should keep covered, basically. It's the same as like wearing a headscarf. And I wore a headscarf as well from like 5 to 18. So singing was very much part of the things that should be kept behind closed doors. But even then, when I sang at home, like I was always told to shut up and all that kind of thing. And I did try and sing. I sang on stage at certain points, and I would keep it secret from my dad. But I always remember my mum telling me how to sing properly, because she used to do singing when she was younger. And she basically trained me out of singing properly because it didn't sound very feminine. So there was loads of things around singing that I didn't explore. So my voice became quite breathy, and my breathing was always like, sorry, I'm just going off in a tangent here.
No, but
what were we talking about? So my singing wasn't as good as it could have been.
No, you got to finish that thought.
Yeah.
So you obviously, because you got to remember, I'm a singer, but also someone's listening to this who does not know about singing, right? And how the things can change. So your singing became very breathy.
So Eva Cassidy basically was a good example of a good singer for me. But my mum didn't realise that so basically anything that was kind of resonant. So, when you're getting to the hingy, that kind of part of your voice, and resonant and belty, anything that was big and sounded like, Mariah Carey or pop singers or whatever, that was seen as bad because it was just so loud.
And what was classed as good? What was like? Give me an example of singers in a certain way.
So the first song I sang, I think I was year 9. And I think my dad was away in Iran, so I just about got away with it. I was singing "What Can I Do?" The Cause on stage for like the schoolhouse competitions, and I think I went home and I couldn't tell anyone that I'd won, even though my mum worked at the school. My mum would have known. Yeah, I couldn't tell my dad or anything.
Well, you won a competition.
Well, I won this school competition.
Got you, but you had to keep that on the wraps.
Yeah, I can't remember being proud of it. Oh no, I remember being proud of it and bounding up to someone, a boy I fancied who was like 3 years older than me. I think.
Okay.
Like, I just won the house competition.
Right, the older man. Yeah. All right.
My boyfriend's 5 years younger than me. No, I think I'm going younger. I'm a pervert now, to be honest. I have such respect for older men now. Not respect, sympathy for older men now. The older I get, I'm like, it's hard. You just start fancying anyone who you get to a certain age. No. Anyway, no.
Bless.
What am I talking about?
Okay, so I'm gonna steer us back.
Please do.
I'm gonna steer us back to one thing. So, because we're gonna put a ribbon on perseverance. So
I'm gonna take my jumper off because it's very hard.
Yeah, no worries. So clearly, you can persevere. there's proof of that. You've shown that you can persevere with certain things. But like you said, it's sticking a course and persevering with
and the
that.
confidence, keeping the confidence and the belief and the motivation that is worth it.
And like, I'll be on, like, I think that is an issue. It's not just an issue. I'm sure you never sit down and think to yourself that the things that you feel and the things that you've gone through are 100% unique to you in terms of, like, because a lot of what you've said, I empathize with it so much. And I said that to you even about your eulogy. There were so many things where I was like, that's me. Or like, yeah, that's me. And the perseverance of sticking with things, because even if you can see that you're good at it, it's then the confidence thing. And sometimes I think you just need blind, almost stupidity, and just this feeling of there's a word I'm looking for, but just when you have stupid confidence, you know what I mean, where it's not even really confidence, it's just stupidity.
It's like a bullishness. You don't see anything else.
Like, or like you just fumble, you just keep fumbling your way through, but you just keep doing the thing, and then one day you realize that you're at the pinnacle of it. But when you look at the Mount Everest of it all, it's daunting, and you have to break it down and just be like, I'm just gonna do the gig today, or I'm just gonna do the singing practice today, or it has to just be broken down because
you say that there's I think some of the stuff that I regret about my life is not knowing where things were going. And I had quite because everything was about, and I will blame my father for this, but it's kind of, everything is about being perfect all the time in the moment. And you know how if you have a goal, you have to sacrifice things. You might not be the perfect daughter, sister, partner, whatever.
Right.
But I wasn't allowed to ever slip in any of those areas.
It's like you had to be perfect in every area, which is
so
impossible.
There was always this lens on myself. And when I had a corporate job when I was like 22, 23, and looking at myself like, oh, you don't want to be this corporate person. You don't want money to matter so much to you. Like, there was never an end goal. There was never like, we'll do this for 3-5 years, make some money. I couldn't even think about getting a house because the way I was raised was always to be looked at and to be a good wife. And I was until I was divorced. And it was like, there were all these things that I was raised that should have been in my future, according to my parents, that never manifested because we all just kind of stopped being Muslim. So it's very weird. Sorry,
I'm going off piece now because I'm not sticking to the eulogy script, because these are some things that I genuinely want to know.
I just can't afford therapy, so this is great.
So all right, tell me about the background. So you were raised in a Muslim household, and do you have any siblings?
So I'm one of 4. I am the second middle child. So I've got the two
brother,
in the middle,
sister,
sister, me, brother. So I think most people would say that was the shittest one to be, is the second third daughter, the bottom middle. Yeah.
Okay, got you. And so you were raised in that household, and your parents. So you mentioned Iran. So I'm assuming your father's
my
Iranian?
Dad's Iranian, and I lived there when I was 2 until I was 4.
Okay.
So my earliest memories are Iran, basically.
And your mum, where's your mum from?
She's English.
Mum's English.
Well, yeah, she's Midlands based. We all were. Right. Yeah.
And did you grow up in the Midlands when you came back to the UK?
Peterborough, yeah. So
Peterborough.
Born in Peterborough.
Right.
And yeah, moved to Iran, lived there for 2 years, came back when I was 4. And we lived in Iran when it was like theocratic kind of. I think it was. No, Khomeini didn't die when I was there. But no, I think Khomeini died when I was there. So the revolution was just 79. We moved there in 88. My mum converted to Islam. She learnt Farsi. She sort of, did everything to be a good wife.
Are you still kind of communicative with your mum?
My mum, I am, yeah. So my mum, basically, she was the breadwinner, the sole carer and breadwinner. So my dad was kind of did whatever he wanted back and forth from Iran. And my mum is incredible when you think of the survival stuff it took, that she decided that she would wait until my little brother. So we were on benefits until I think my little brother was 4, 5. Mum waited for him to go to primary school. We were all 2 years apart. So my mum had, when she was 28, she had 4 kids under 6. Yes.
That's like my mum.
Really? So
6,
4, 2 and baby.
maybe not all under it, but she
Yeah.
was like 27 and had 4 kids.
Yeah,
So,
it's insane. And when just how much they had to survive, but also you think you don't have to do this because no one's telling them they don't have to.
Right.
And I think obviously there's such shame around benefits or anything like that. We are not raised, my grandma's proper working class side of the family, and so my mum decided she was going to be a teacher because that meant she could raise the kids and have holidays, and when we took summer holidays.
Very rational.
So she did her maths GCSE. She bumped up she needed a maths GCSE. So she already had like a degree, but then she went to Cambridge, Homerton, did her PGCE. They basically gave her a grant, but then told her they couldn't give her a grant anymore, so she negotiated them to give her a loan, which took her like 15 years to pay off. Like incredible. She bought like a microwave and a dishwasher. The next door neighbor picked us up after school. She would be home by 4. Like she did this all herself, and my dad was the hand tied behind her back, basically. Just made everything worse. It was when he was there.
What an
incredible.
Amazing woman, though,
incredible.
man. That's a hell of a lot to do.
Yeah, and
So,
survival mode though, and it blows my mind.
and then, so obviously they're not together anymore.
No.
But when did the relationship come to an end? When did they?
When I
part?
was 14.
Right.
So 14 when I started to go through a very, very religious phase. Like this is what I talk about on stage, being like my Shemima Begum stage, basically.
So when you were 14, when you say you went through a really religious stage, do you mean like deep into Islam?
Deep into Islam, wearing like really strict religious clothing, like a jilbab, hanging out in like East London circles with a woman I knew who lived in East London. So no one got bombed. It was fine.
All right. Don't send anyone around to this house. But what influenced that connection with religion at that stage then? Was it influenced from the dad, from your father? Or was this you? Was this your journey?
When I wrote in my memoir.
Let me get you a
when
glass
I
of
was
rosé.
when I was trying to write this stuff, so I did go over it a lot, and it was like religion is basically the absentee parent. Like it's a very convenient way of parenting your children. You give them religion, and they will think that you're watching them. God is watching them whenever So I was a very good kid because I was just so worried about hell and being bad. Religion weirdly I think came more from my mum, because a bit like me, if she's going to do something, she's going to do it properly. So my dad was from like a Shia background. Iranians are very chilled with their religion. Like you meet Iranians. I mean, most Iranians in this country might even call themselves atheists. They're just sort of, whatever. But my dad's family is more spiritual religion.
So your mum is, in a way, your mum kind of adopted the religion more so than
I think my dad used it as a tool. But he was, and we do still talk, and I try and forge some sort of relationship with him. But it was very much, the dinner table was constantly talking about what women should and shouldn't be doing every day. Whenever my dad was home, when we had dinner as a family, it's women should and shouldn't act like this, good Muslim women. I remember even we talk about, the Chinese, they make good wives. I'm like, why are we doing this? Why are you talking about this?
And obviously, like, those conversations would have had, major like impacts on you in terms of like the way you maybe viewed yourself, the way you viewed women, the way you viewed the role of a woman, etc., etc. Yeah. But you also mentioned that at some point you kind of lost religion. You got so what was the catalyst there? How and when did that happen?
Probably, I think when I finally realised, I think it was because I lost my virginity, and I was like, well, you're a whore who's going to hell, so there's no way going. There's no way back now. That was the moment. And that was it. I was like, I'm going to hell. There's no point in me. But weirdly, I genuinely, because I've been raised with such ideas about women, that I was like, I am worthless. I am actually worthless because that was the only thing that was raised to be important about women.
Got you.
And even though like my dad had moved out by then and I wasn't, I'd sort of roughly stopped practicing. Like I wasn't praying as much anymore, and I sometimes didn't wear my headscarf. But because I was white as well, it was like no one could tell I was Muslim if I didn't wear a headscarf. So as soon as that went, it was like, there's nothing. My religion was such an external thing as well, because my dad would determine how well I was how good I was, had I prayed that day, had I fasted, blah, blah, blah. Sorry, I've realised I've taken this way off, so do bring us back on track.
So, I mean, just ultimately, you answered the question effectively when I was like, when did you break away from like the religious teachings? Like, when did you lose your religion?
Yeah, 18, I think it was. And it was, but you'll see this with Muslims. If they ever do, pork will be the last thing to go. The very last thing.
So when did pork go?
I was hungover and someone offered me a bacon sandwich and I was like, why are you now being religious? So I had it.
What was your first experience of the bacon sandwich?
It was actually a hot Polish chef at a restaurant I was waiting at.
I thought you were going to say it was a hot Polish bacon sandwich.
No.
I was like, I didn't know the Poles were specifically known for their bacon sandwiches. All right, sorry. This is the way you kind of like said that information. I was like, all right.
It was a really hot Polish. It was actually a hot Polish chef. I was, I must have been 21. And I was working at a posh cafe in Pimlico, and I was hungover. And the chefs would bring you up your lunch, and he brought me up like a chicken and bacon wrap, and I took one bite, and I was like, oh, this has got bacon in it. And I'm pretty sure I went, yeah, don't worry about it, I'll finish it, because I was hungover. But yeah, the bacon's the last thing to go. So basically, usually, and you'll see it with women start to change their headscarf styles. And when you see it get from full hijab with like a pin underneath to kind of turban style to like gypsy style, whatever, there's loads of styles. This coming off.
So this is like the slow, this slow change.
Yeah.
So if it's like down to like the gypsy style,
it was down like, yeah. Unless they've always culturally worn it like that.
Then she's ready to be approached.
She's ready.
All right.
Never approach them, even then. And then it's like, I was going to say it's like boys and then alcohol and then cigarettes, but actually I know a load of Muslim women with headscarves who did the boys first, and I was like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that.
Okay, well, here's the big question. Here's the burning question that everybody wants to know. What's better, sex or bacon?
Sex.
All right.
Sex. I mean, with a bacon sandwich afterwards. I mean, depends. To be honest, if it's a good bacon sandwich, that's your route in.
Oh, really? What was the better first experience?
Oh, the bacon sandwich was the better.
I guess I just structured the question incorrectly.
Yeah, no. Oh no! I mean, I still talk to that boyfriend, but
no, it was the bacon sandwich.
No, that would have been if I'd lost my virginity to a bacon sandwich, it'd probably be much more pleasurable.
No, bless.
But no. No. I mean, if you're from a religious background, I highly doubt your first sexual experience is going to be fun.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't think most people's first sexual experiences are fun. It's usually just a lot of fumbling around, trying to figure out what you're doing and hoping you're doing it right.
Yeah, forgive me, Father, basically.
Well,
It wasn't my dad. I need to be.
Let's hope not.
Oh, no. Sorry, stuff just comes out. I'm sorry. I probably need sugar. I have only eaten sugar today. I had Haribo and then chocolate, and sorry.
Well, crack on. Eat a chocolate. What I was going to...
Bring it back to the eulogy. I'm so sorry.
No, I do. In fact, this actually leads me on to your hopeless your being a hopeless romantic. I mean, I forget the exact terminology you use. I'm actually going to find it because it was something to do with...
Could never pour myself fully into it.
Never pour yourself fully into it. That was it. Why so? Jesus Christ, we're the same person. It is so ridiculous. I'm like, how is it that this person is me? It's like, because funnily enough, it's like there's certain parallels even to our upbringing. Like, I wasn't raised religious, but I was raised in a house so there's 4 of us, although I'm the youngest, and 3 girls, 1 boy, and my dad was very just very serious, very dominant. Like, when he was in the house, you knew he was in the house, and when he bellowed, you could, like, and everyone's walking on eggshells and that sort of vibe, and funnily enough, like, it was also my mum who was like the breadwinner. And like, so all of these things are just like, wow, they're so similar. And then for some reason, the romantic thing, like, I was also a very hopeless romantic. I still know how to be romantic, but I was hopelessly romantic. And I did pour myself into it until I got hurt.
Yeah.
But what happened? What was it with you in terms of being a hopeless romantic, but not being able to pour yourself into it?
I think romance I can associate with a lot of fantasy as well. You know, we have all these ideas of what romance is, and romance is just, it's just a practice. Like being romantic in a relationship is just doing nice things that the other person would appreciate, and that I can do that. I'm quite good at that.
Yeah. All right, don't need to brag.
It's just hand jobs, basically. It's not complicated.
Pretty much that. Hand jobs and bacon sandwiches, baby.
But I think I had such ideas about love and romance and men as well. And you're sort of taught, the way I was raised was if you act a certain way as a woman, then you'll just get what you deserve from a man. And you'll be loved and they'll see you for who you are and but you must do everything right. And obviously that is not the real world, and you go to university and you feel like you've just got all this love to share. You don't really notice you're crazy, like, because I was crazy. But I just think, like my early experiences with boys were not great. Although like I'm trying to incorporate this into my work in progress thing, and it's sort of like my midpoint reversal, which was when I was 18, I had like my first, probably only Dawson's Creek moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Like I loved Dawson's Creek. I wasn't really allowed to watch it. Mum wouldn't let me because like all the kissing and stuff. It's like, you can watch Predator when you're a child, but do not, like the stuff I've seen on TV as a little girl is horrendous.
Yeah.
And then, but no kissing.
But no kissing.
Don't watch this, love. And it was a boy I'd fancied for like 2-3 years. He was gorgeous, blonde haired, blue eyed, rugby player. And I think I realised since fucked up, but it's just like a moth to a flame. And we finally like kissed. It was in liquid under the laser beams of liquid.
All right, someone's reliving this
and
right
I finally
now.
I finally got to kiss him, and I think I stopped wearing my headscarf the year earlier. I'd come home for the summer after uni, and it was just like everything just felt like it was meant to as a teen in love, and it felt great. And the next day I texted him my availability for the next 4 weeks, so it sort of put an end to it. But the moment was great.
I love your
but it could have
efficiency.
I know. I'm like, right, let's make this happen.
So efficient.
I've waited
and
3 years for this. Can we?
Now I'm available on these days and these times. I will do this. I will not do
annoyingly,
that.
he did like.
Yeah.
I think he regretted that because he did try and follow up like 6 months, a year later, and he had lost his chance. But anyway, that was kind of like this wonderful romantic. Oh, life can be anything. And what is my point? Romance. I think that as you get older, so I'm divorced and I put a lot into that relationship. Like I've put so much more into my marriage than my own life, you're like, that's something I persevere at. Like I will flog a dead horse. And with my ex-husband, it was, I never know if it's love or performing love. I think because we know so much more about love and relationships now that it's kind of ruined it. Like as you get older and you see all this psychobabble and everything, and you're like, oh, well, you're not really in love. It's like limerence, or you're not really in love. It's just your attachment issues, or oh, it's because they bring out your mummy or daddy issues, and you're like, do we have room for love anymore? Like I genuinely don't feel we can, because I overanalyze everything, and there's always a TikTok video telling me what it really is.
It's like you can't even really trust your own mind and emotions and feelings and direction anymore. There's a scientific or a psychological
reason for everything.
Explanation for it all,
for everything. And I think after my divorce, I spent a lot of time obviously writing and purging and thinking about everything, like writing down, purging even, that I just sort of became super, super cautious and super careful. And it means now my idea of love is much more sort of calm, but I will always feel that little Dawson's Creek romance thing is like, it's lost forever, and I feel really sad about that.
Oh,
not with that guy.
No, I mean, you speak to my soul, sister, because it's the truth. I don't think I'm ever gonna have that again. I'm just too rational now. It's like my rationale trumps my emotional ability to connect. And I can still identify it. It's like I know the language, you know, I can speak the language, but I don't have that anymore. And that feeling is amazing. That feeling of when you're just in that luster of it all, and you know, you go to bed and you just can't wait for the next day. The potential of maybe seeing that person, and you know, just being where they are, and it's just a beautiful feeling. But I agree, it's like something happens when you get it, whether it's you're hurt or you get older or you just go through a few experiences, and it takes the shine off a little bit.
It's like you can have this deep, caring sort of love, but there's like a sadness in this. And I often think, like, do I not love enough? Do I not give enough to my partner? Do I, am I not doing enough? And then I kind of want to cancel that thought, because that's like the self-critical thing. It's like, you are just allowed to live, you are just allowed to exist as well by yourself, because I'm so used to being in a relationship being like, what does he need from me, what should I be doing? And
also it's a case of, you know, what is the information that you're getting back from the other person, you know, because if the other person is happy with what you're giving, then you know, take a chill pill and just be like, I'm clearly I'm giving enough, I know, but then the
guilt and the shame, and that's all the childhood stuff. I was never allowed to relax as a kid, and that was both from my mum's and my dad's side. It was like, you're either being watched or analysed, or there's something wrong with you, or why aren't you working, why aren't you looking busy at least, you know, there's always and so I feel this, I never really called it anxiety, but I do feel an anxiety in relationships. And I always have this thing of like, maybe you should just be alone, because then you don't need to worry, you literally don't need to worry.
That is, man, like that's something, it's something that I have thought about. Like, it's something I've considered. It's something where I thought maybe I'm just built to be a bachelor. Like, maybe I'm meant to be a bachelor. Like, even if I have relationships, maybe I'm just meant to be there for a time, give the best of myself, and then return to like my own little cave, you know, like maybe just being there all the time. And like, because I'm always going to be self-critical, and even that thing of showing more love or giving more love, I had this thought the other day, but it was more from a perspective of regret. Like, will I get to the end of my life and will I think, I should have loved more, I should have loved my family more, I should have loved my friends more, I should have loved my partners more, and then I'm like, but how do you do it? How do I love more? My heart only has the capacity to give what it can give, and it doesn't feel like it can give more. Like, even if I try, it's like, I don't know how to do it. Then I'm like, should I have therapy about it? But then I'm like, but do I even want to unlock that? Like, this is, I've got this far, like this is just, maybe this is me. Maybe it is, and maybe that's good enough also.
That level of like, should I be exploring this, or at what point do we just get to accept ourselves? We're in a very weird time. It's never been this introspective, and we're constantly figuring ourselves out. And it is because there's been like a lot of wounds of the past, and a lot of our, you know, my parents' generation were all divorced and everything. And most of us are now getting our first divorces out the way.
Whoop, whoop.
But it's like
divorce gang.
But we're so like afraid. There's a big fear thing. But do I need to figure all these things out? At what level at what point do I just accept stuff? And I know you have to accept your darkness. You have to accept the parent in you that you hate, and then you can like love your parents as well, blah blah. There's all this stuff, and I'm like, I'm kind of bored now. I'm fucking 38. I've had therapy like 3 or 4 times in my 20s, and you know, I had therapy when it was a shameful thing. When I was 18 at university, that was shit you kept secret, or you told people for a bit of attention to sound interesting. Like, we don't.
Whereas now, you wear it like a banner.
You're not seeing a therapist? What's wrong with you? And it's like, well, we used to call therapists just friends that you bought a drink for. Like, that's, you're paying your friends. Anyway, what was my point? I can't remember. But at what level do you just go, this is who I am, and I need to keep working? And
acceptance, I think, is the one thing that we need. We need to figure out a way to just accept who we are. And I think in that acceptance, there can be peace, and that's where you'll find peace. But getting there is the journey, and it is hard because I always feel like I need to be more. But that's why I said to you, especially in relationships, it's a case of what's the evidence that's coming back to you. Because even though in my mind I'm like, I could love more, I should love more, whatever, it's like my girlfriend's happy.
Yeah.
You know, she's happy with me as a person, and she's happy with the way I am and what I offer. And it's like, well, sometimes you're like, well, if everyone else is happy with me, why can't I just be happy
it's all
with
the intrusive
me?
brain, you know, it's all those intrusive thoughts and the criticism.
Yeah.
And also our ideas of love were built on, well, for me anyway, love was about being criticized, having high expectations, like always having to reach for something more. And then those tiny little bits of reward and validation.
Yeah.
But the bitter disappointment constantly, and then just, oh, actually daddy likes me today, oh, what have I done, you know, big smile.
Right.
And I don't know how to sort of let that go, because that's such a visceral kind of, you know, trigger. You feel it in your body, and when that's missing, that and then you can't just be like, oh, it's just dopamine, it's just blah, blah, blah. But yeah, we break everything down into chemicals.
This might be a tough one for you, right, in terms of to respond to this question. But if you had to give one word for why you got married and one word for why you got divorced, what would it be?
Ah, my God. That's not a good thing. One word. Why did I actually want to get married to him? I mean, my response when he proposed was, are you fucking kidding me? And then when I woke up with a start at 6 a.m. Like kind of, what have I done? And then I went back to sleep, and I woke up at 9 a.m. and posted on Facebook that I'm married, I'm engaged to the love of my life. And he literally said, that's a bit cringe. I was like, oh, okay, we're criticizing our own Facebook statuses. It was panic. I think panic. And I don't know what. Everything about that was panic. Yeah. And divorce was, I mean, he was the one that finally decided. I was the one that got everything in motion. Like, I moved out. And he was the one who, like, yeah, I mean, we lived apart for 3 months when we got divorced. And yeah, he came round. I sent him away with tuna steaks for dinner after our marriage ended. I was like, don't forget the lemon. Here's a lemon as well. You'll need a lemon with the tuna.
How lovely, man.
He was coming round for dinner, and then we sat on the bed, and he was like, just made a face like, yeah, this is over.
Did you know it was? Did you?
Yeah, we were separate. We were living apart. It was constant arguments. It was when I realised that everything was geared to what he wanted, and he was like a chess player. He would see moves 5-6 in advance and know what you were going to do, and he would line you up to get what he needed. And I think I finally saw that. There are a few things, but when I finally saw that, I think it was on a gig, and he had made it seem like he was doing something for me, and then I was like, oh, this wasn't about me. And yeah, I'm trying to think what the actual frustration. I basically remember looking at a mug and wanting to break it and just slash my hands with it. I was so pent up. So there was so much pressure. But yeah, I can't really, like, when I think about those, it's weird because I can make so many jokes about divorce and blah, blah, blah. And you just sort of like, oh, well, you know, that was what it was and blah, blah, blah. We both tried our best. But when I think of the actual physical kind of weight of that marriage and trying to, I always talk about, he's sort of, and it wasn't quite like this, but a man can build you a garden with beautiful walls and roses, but you're not allowed out. And it was like that kind of, yeah.
That's a wicked analogy, man. But it's a very apt analogy for not just relationships and the ways some relationships and marriages can be, you know, and the way some men can be towards women, and even some women can be towards men. But sometimes it's the life that we live and the world that we're in. Sometimes we can forget that we're actually imprisoned. They can be beautiful, like, you know, lovely walls of flowers and everything, but then you walk around and you're like, I'm still within these four walls.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was, you know, and that's not to say that there wouldn't have been a range of things that, you know, he was imprisoned by with me. And he probably, I think he just wasn't in love with me. But he knew I was a good partner, sort of thing. And that comes with its own pressure and its own sadness as well.
Yeah. In a nutshell, would you say that do you feel like divorce was the right thing in terms of for you, for your life, for your direction?
Yeah, absolutely. But what's weird is, because I remember when the marriage was ending, he said how he didn't want do you think I want to be divorced at my age? Because he was like 7 years older than me. And I was like, I don't care if I'm divorced. Like, I care about our relationship not working. But for him, it was like this real label. Whereas I always aspire to be divorced. I always look up to divorced women. They're very glamorous.
I just think anybody who, like, especially like when you call time on a relationship, if you don't think things are working out, whether you're married or not, I know marriage is bigger because there's a lot more to go through with a divorce. But I just think coming to a realization of I'm either not getting what I want or need, or this isn't right, or you're not treating me in the way that I deserve, or whatever the realization is, I think it takes a lot of balls, you know, to just literally say to yourself, I'm out.
Yeah.
You know?
I think that I've never had. I have only ever I've never really broken up with anyone. I have, you know, ended stuff after a couple of dates, which I hope is quite obvious. I'm still with everyone. Yeah. But I've really struggled. I do the thing that I do just enough to get a ball in motion.
Right.
And then everything else, again, and I think it's this analysing, are you a good or are you a bad person? Are you looking at the situation correctly? Doubting yourself, all this kind of, like, it's never just been enough for me to be like, oh, you're not happy, get out. It's never been enough, which, like, why? And I, again, you know, it's just from having it. My happiness was not important growing up. Whether I was doing the right or wrong thing was important, whether it's good or bad. Have you analysed this from 70 different angles? And so my happiness, like, are you crazy? Like, why on earth would you? And it's a working class thing as well, quite a working class British thing. Like, who the hell do you think you are to be happy? This is crazy.
Right. Just kind of like suck it up and get on with it. Like, because that's what we all do.
And in the marriage as well, I noticed that we were just looking at it from right or wrong rather than we're not happy. Like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
But we would both been getting our little kicks of dopamine and validation, and you just end up in this cycle. And I think ultimately he met someone else that he wanted to be with, and that was the push.
I got you. I mean, I've always worried, I'm not worried, but I've always struggled with the idea of getting married. Like, I don't know if it's something that I'd necessarily want to do, but you know, I imagine that any relationship, especially a marriage, if you feel like if it gets to that stage where this is it, you know, it must be hard to take for both parties to some degree. But I'm glad that on the other end of it, on the other side of it, you feel as though, you know, it was the right thing, and that you feel like you're better off for it.
The relationship was completely the wrong thing. I don't necessarily feel I'm better off for the relationship. I feel like I've lost my whole 20s and that I made some really big decisions because I was gravitating towards a man in a way that, whatever is easiest for the relationship is the right thing. So I gave up a job. I left my job at the BBC. They were all moving to Manchester. I was 23, 24, and we lived down in Sussex. And it wasn't even a consideration that my career, my life would be at the heart of our relationship for a bit. I didn't even think about it. I would never have allowed him to bear the burden of doing something that was better for me. And because my whole family was so like, well, what does the man want? My grandma will still be like, if I'm going away for a weekend, and what's your other half doing? What's he doing? It's just this obsession with am I still performing for this man? Am I doing everything I need to?
Yeah.
And I think 24 was in a stable job and a good job. Like, BBC were very flexible with, you know, I was able to work part-time and stuff. Didn't know I had ADHD, but had a great boss. And I didn't just go, oh no, this is my life and this matters too. It was like, nope, we just stay wherever the man wants to be. Terrible.
Are you better at that now? Do you feel like you're getting better at that now?
I currently live in Woking because my boyfriend had a job in Woking, but we're probably moving back to London. It's a weird thing because I am never, but also this thing when you're quite stagnant or you're used to being passive. And I'm not a passive, I don't feel like I'm a passive person in any way in my life, but I've never had the balls to just really follow through with my own path. And this is where we talk about perseverance and goals and the end goal, because I can be so easily distracted. And, you know, like, and I still at the back of my mind, my dad's voice is like, well, if you're not praying, you're not a good Muslim. What's the point in everything? You're just, but, you know, I have that, but it's not quite as bad. I'm very good at justifying a decision that's good for someone else also being good for me. I will find all the reasons that go, oh, and this works for me too.
Right.
And it's a cop out as well.
And you know, I think sometimes it's easier. It's just easier to do that because it's less responsibility on you, especially if things don't go right. Then it's like, well, you know, it wasn't ultimately my decision.
And you have to be the villain in your own story. Like no one wants to be, but it's like, no, this is you, take responsibility. Yes, it might mean that relationship's harder or that you might not even have the relationship. But or it might be that the relationship's more important than where you live and all. And there are compromises, but I've never been able to quite pinpoint when something is a sensible compromise and when it's like my soul kicking and screaming and being dragged somewhere else.
I got you.
Woking is not quite that, but
all right. Woking, I've been down there. I've done your gig in Woking.
No, yeah, your first
not too bad.
You know, it sells out every month now, that gig, because you helped kick it off.
Believe it or not, it's in a very serendipitous turn of events. My last guest, I believe, is doing your next gig.
Oh, Musin.
Yeah.
He's done a couple. He did a last minute in January, but actually he's doing October. He's not doing April. But,
got you. All right, cool. All right, well, if the spot
he's great. Up. Of course, you can always go down. I've got loads. Yeah, come on.
Okay.
Loads of, yeah.
So, okay, kids. Talk to me. Like, why is it? Why is that a definite not doing it?
You know what? A couple of years ago, 1.5 years ago, I had a period of like grieving not having children. And it's a period that I think a lot of women will go through one way women who don't have children will go through one way or the other. Mine's not because I've ever wanted or ever tried or know anything about my reproductive system, anything like that. I assume I probably would. I always assumed I would want children, and I've just never felt the pull. And I am extremely good with children. I've spent a lot, and I think part of it is because I was raised very Muslim women all sat together in a room, and I'd be looking after the babies. You know, all the women would be with the babies. I've always been very, very good with kids, and I'm under no illusions as to how hard it is in a way that a lot of my friends are fucking idiots. I'm like, how do you not know how hard this is? Like, I've spent so much time with little kids, like in regular time. So there were a couple of little boys that I literally would see 2 or 3 times a week, kind of babysitting for a friend. But and then you look at your life and like, why are you babysitting? Actually, this is not your creative path, but whatever. And I loved it. And I know how stressful it is, and I know the lows. I know how awful it feels when a baby is screaming and you cannot get them to shut up, and you feel so stressed. And I know how much effort that takes. So I think part of it is I don't have that illusion of our children will be better or different or anything like that, in a way that I don't think people take seriously. Like, I know the daily impact. I've been woken up at 2, 3, 5 in the morning by children screaming. So there's that. There's also my partner's not fussed about children, and he's so much younger than me, 5 years. But he has, like any man, he's got all the time in the world.
Well, you know, they say that, but as a man who is also 38 and childless,
Child free.
Child free.
That's the empowered way.
I think another thing happens though, where you may think to yourself, okay, yeah, I still have time. Although I've never had a sperm count, so I have no idea what my guys are doing. Like, they might be lackluster, like just lazy, you know. I like to imagine that they're getting ready. I like to imagine that they're in there kind of like lifting weights and just like saying, whenever you're ready for us, Roman, we're ready to do the job. But they might not be, right? But not just that. It's also the fact that you think to yourself, if I have kids now, I don't get to spend as much time with them. Like, you know, as I get older, the likelihood of me seeing them accomplish things and have certain experiences, that limits. So even though I could potentially have a child at 70 if I live that long, right? It's then a case of, but what quality time am I having with that child?
Yeah.
And I think that's just the other side of the coin.
Yeah, there's still like a normal limit on that. I mean, I do.
But that's something obviously that men and women both would experience in terms of
we both deal with it being
time.
old parents.
But there's different,
and
obviously
and there are women
biological
who've had them in their
factors.
50s and all that sort of thing. You know, I also know a lot of women who've dealt with baby loss and miscarriage and not being able to have children, and it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. And I think, again, maybe moving into that safety thing, and this is something, God, I had a call. So when I was at my full-time job a year and a half ago, so my boss had a little baby, like 6 weeks old, and he brought her onto the camera and was like bottle feeding her or something during the call. And I had to close the camera off and I burst out crying. And there was just something about, so this is the thing I sort of grieved, is I will never love something that much. And that's like, it just sounds very, you know, egotistical to even think about that as being something, but the absence of that love is something I had to grieve. I will never experience that, and that's fine, because I will experience a load of other things. And I mean, I love my niece and nephew.
And you got your,
I have my niece and nephew, and I love. Oh my God, and that for me is enough. But there was something, and I think that's where I realized I was going through this process of grieving not having children in a future that I was never sure they would be there, but yeah. And I don't know.
So, all right, on a scale of like 1 to 10, where is your desire to have a child?
2.
Okay.
Yeah. I've never felt this burning need to have children in a way that a lot of my friends really do.
Yeah. I've spoken with friends of mine. Most of my friendship group, especially from high school, have kids. And I remember speaking with especially the men and asking, like, when did you know you wanted to have kids? And they're like, oh,
when it was born.
They're like, no.
Oh, really?
A couple of them are like, I always knew I wanted to have a family.
Wow.
Like, I always knew I wanted to have a family. And I was like, man, I envy you, because I don't. You know, I've never, ever felt like I really want to have a family. And, you know, I know even, well, my last guest, Musin, we were talking about this. And in his episode, he was talking about the fact that, you know, he lost his father. And it was when everyone was gathered around his dad, like when his dad was passing, and there was family there. That's when he knew, like, I want to have a family, because, like, for that moment. Yeah. And you know, there's so many different motivational factors as to why people want to have kids. But I've never really had that real pull of that desire either. And there is a part of me that wants to know what that love is. Yeah. Like, if there was a pill I could take to just know what that love feels like, I'd take the pill.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would. But then to know that for the rest of my life, I also have to have the other feelings, the anxiety, the stress, the frustration, you know, the lack of sleep, like everything that comes with it. That's the tough part. And it's just like, once you make that decision and once that child's here, they're here. Yeah. And I know myself so well in the sense that I wouldn't abandon my child. Like, I couldn't not be with my child, no matter how angry or frustrated I am. Yeah. I've got to be there. But yeah, I just never have had that pull either. It's a
and I think if you don't, and if you haven't achieved everything you want to do and you haven't done everything, it's like, well, you need to get that. Well, I don't know. Some people say different things, like you can just have a kid and then I have a lot of different friends who have different approaches to having children, and I do sometimes wonder, it's like, am I just not a mature enough human being? Like, is that it? Or maybe I'll get the pull in like when I'm 45, and maybe that actually I will be able to, and maybe it's just who I am biologically. But it's a lot of effort. Yeah. It looks like a lot of effort, a lot of admin. And I already have enough babies and children in my life that I love so much. Right. And I love my friends' kids. And it genuinely is, like my niece and nephew, I mean, they're 15 and 11. It's genuinely like a bit of a motivator for me to get my shit together so that I can be the home they go to when they're older, and I can help them if they're getting work experience somewhere or they want to stay on. You know, I really...
That's love too, man. That's love. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah. And also, like, I think I read a book when I was 10 years ago. It was some working class woman's memoir, and her daughter published it after her death. And it was basically about how she didn't want kids, and she hated being a mother. And her own daughter had to publish this book about her mother hating being a mother. And that is true too. Yeah. It's not this, I think a lot of women really hide the fact that they would reverse it if they could.
Yeah.
Not obviously loads, but enough, I think.
Yeah. I think it's, you know, realistically, you take a cross section of society and people who have kids, and I'm sure that a lot of them, you know, probably do feel that way. And, you know, we all know that there's like postnatal depression that's experienced by both men and women. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many things that can happen after a child is born, and it should be a joyous, magical, you know, and it probably is that too. But like we've discovered in life, it's like you can have one thing and another thing be the case also. You know, we live here in the West, and we've got so much. The fact that me and you can sit down on an afternoon and just chat for an hour and a half about life and be introspective. But that's a luxury. But at the same time, we're still going to feel what we feel. So, you know, two things can be true. Whether it's in the cards for me, I mean, I don't know. And, you know, like you said, maybe it's a maturity thing. Maybe because we're creatives, there is that part of us that's like, no, I still need to be free. I still got to do my thing. And then later in life, it changes. Who knows?
Honestly, I often think if we had money, like if money was like not a factor, if we were like these old school, middle class kind of romantic thinkers and writers and everything, we wouldn't even be worrying about any of this. We wouldn't, like, we'd just be thinking about all the other stuff. Yeah. And we would feel the freedom to be and do what we want. And if we wanted kids, it's fine because it's someone else's problem. If you don't want them, you know, like they'll look after it. You know, there's all these. I genuinely think it's the morality element that has us two particularly like wrapped up in knots.
And I think the morality element, you are right, because I think we both clearly are consents. We both strive to be moral individuals, and you know, we want to do something the right way. And there's only one right way to do certain things, you know, and when it comes to kids, the right way really is to be there, to give them your time, your attention, your love. And if you're giving all of your time, attention and love to another human being, then it's got to take away from somewhere else. Yeah.
I think it's another standards thing. It's like I would want to be a really good parent. Yeah. And I can't live up to my own standards. And also my parents telling me, you'll understand when you're parents. I quite like the fact that they will never be proven right.
Got you.
So, you will never be right about this. I will never understand.
What are those micro moments when you did act fearlessly? Because you speak of these micro moments and the fact that you don't think there's been enough of them really, but like
probably like conversations like this when I just say the dumb thing or just fearlessly try to be myself or say the thing that I'm thinking and not over worry too much. Although I've literally just analysed how correct that sentence was. Those sorts of things. Micro, I sometimes wonder whether like my fearless micro moments are where I really do the dumb thing, which go against my morality and values, but they're authentic and they're real and they're,
Got you.
Or like, what was that? Or like when I don't know if you saw my Instagram story the other day where basically there were two guys shouting in a pub and I like screamed at them both to shut the fuck up and they did.
Okay.
So, like those moments. That's me. I was quite proud of that.
I didn't see that one, but now you've given me some work. I might have to edit that bit into the pod. Yeah, go on.
It was great. It was I mean, I did it in a calculated way. I could see one was near the door. They were not going to fight. And I just thought a woman screaming at them is not what they expect right now, but it will stop them. And it did. I was so proud.
Good work.
So it's probably fearlessness like that. I also have a fearlessness when it comes to like doing stuff with my friends. Like to a point of like not worrying whether I come across in a bad way or I did it with my ex-husband where I would try and network for him. That was probably a disadvantage to me. And you know, when you're putting yourself out there on someone else's behalf and you're like, oh, it's not really in my value system, blah, 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 but I'll do it because it's you and nothing matters. I'm not important. So those kind of things. saying the dumb thing, putting myself out there, throwing myself into a situation. But in terms of the big building blocks in my life, I'm not fearless in that way. Like, yeah, I usually end up passive or thrown into situations, and then I have to act fearlessly after them. But
what would be, okay, so if you had to workshop a fearless thing to do in your life that would be like the maybe out of character, but like this would be something that you couldn't see yourself doing, but hey, this would be classed as a fearless thing to do in terms of those building blocks, right? What can you think of anything that would be?
It would take so much planning because I have no money at the moment. Like, money makes all the difference, because you'd be like, cool, I'd move
money,
here.
All right, so money's not an object. Money's not an object, etc.
Right.
What's the thing?
It's not even a big thing. It would just be like moving back to London and like literally going to every single club and trying to gig every single night. It's not even a big like crazy thing.
Cool, we got it here. It's on video and audio. At least there's a vision. There's a thing. There's the thing.
Was it. Yeah, making myself do that stuff like 4 or 5 times a week, and not worrying about. I think I'd be all right forcing myself into that situation, or it might be. I don't know, often there's like this romance of going to like Austin or New York and trying the comedy scene there and be like, look, I'll just spend 6 months doing it. But I think that's because we associate this real glamour about making it in the States rather than just worry about the UK's right here and they understand your sense of humor way better.
But funnily enough, I've had similar thoughts, but not even just comedy. Like sometimes I thought, Roman, just go to like Nashville for 6 months and just network. Mm-hmm. Just go network, go to open mic nights, meet some songwriters. Like, just take 6 months out of your life and go to Nashville. Yeah. You know, what's the worst that could happen? But what's the best that could happen? You know, and I have thoughts like that, and then I just keep doing the same thing.
Yeah, no, but that's it, isn't it? We do the same thing because also we know that actually, if we were to the fears we have to overcome, are right here, and. It's like there are networking events here. There are things you can do. There's so much you can do here. We have Arts Council funding. We have all these things, but it's just that effort.
Sometimes it is also just kind of like the idea of doing it big, though, like getting yourself just massively out of the comfort zone. Yeah. You know, and there's something romantic about that.
I mean, I know. Yeah, I mean. And there's also how you might be perceived in America as well. True, there's a difference there. To here. But I mean, I'm all for the thinking big. Like part of my comedy stuff that I do, stories about when I was a kid and where my confidence went. Like I wrote when I was 9, 10, maybe 11, 97, 11. I wrote a song. I found the Spice Girls a fan club address in Smash Hits magazine, and I decided I was going to write a song for the Spice Girls, and it wasn't just a song for the Spice Girls, it was a Christmas song for the Spice Girls about Princess Diana, and I wrote this song and I sent off a cassette tape to this fan club. I'm like, so that's how big I used to think. So
what happened to us?
I know, right? But
that's how big we're supposed to still be thinking. But this
is the work in progress thing I'm trying to work on. Is that it's confidence and where your confidence goes and what and why. Like, why do we stop? Yes, there's reality, but I think also maybe it was like my background and something about what happened in the noughties as well with this idea of being discovered. And that was all the X Factor pop idol thing. Like, to be good, you had to be discovered. Someone from above had to give you permission to be great. And I didn't see what normal creativity looked like. You were either on TV and a star or you were nothing, rather than, oh no, there's loads of little groups around you. There's community groups. You can be a musician here. You can do that. Like, this idea of making it, I think, ruined a generation because we thought that there was no middle ground in a way that a lot of people were just jobbing musicians or artists or whatever, and they could make a reasonable income. And we're like, no, we're either a star or we're nothing. Right. And so you stop looking for those middle opportunities.
And that's the other thing, making it really is particular to that person. Yeah. Making it, if it's doing what you love every day, and being able to survive from that, for some people, that's making it. Mm-hmm. The top 1% that are like global superstars, I mean, we can't all be that, but there's a myriad of other places that we
don't want to be that because you have to be a certain way. We idolize these people.
Yeah.
And they are not good people. You cannot be a good billionaire.
Yeah,
you can't.
But also, it's the life that you would live too. It's like walking out and everyone seeing you and knowing you. You couldn't come here and do a podcast today if you were a global superstar. You'd have like security. You know, it's not a.
I still would though.
Oh, bless you.
But yeah, it's these ideas we have, but I think that's also part of the looking at yourself 360. So you're going, I wouldn't want to be that, and then you just don't even try anything because it's like. That being Beyonce doesn't have to be the goal. Making just enough money to live off every year or having a predictable income. Right. That can be the goal.
That can be the goal, yeah. And you know what? I think also there's this feeling of you have to try stuff too. Like, you know, because I find that I can spend a lot of time just thinking, but less time doing. Yeah. And to be fair, this podcast is a perfect example of me having thought for 2 years and then just saying, I'm sick of thinking, just do. Yeah. And you got to just jump in, man. There's 2 more things I want to ask you. One is something that I ask everybody at the end of every podcast, but the other one is kind of based from your eulogy. And it's a question of what would make you happy? In fact, I take that back because me asking you, maybe he should listen to this podcast and then he'll know the answers. But no, like, because that is me asking that question actually suggests that you're not happy. So the question is, are you happy?
Yes, I would actually say generally I am, but I think that's more because I am finding new outlets for my sadness and where my brain goes. And my renewed commitment to creating stuff. Yeah, like I always used to write poetry. I always used to keep a diary. I always used to do all these things as a kid, like your natural ways of dealing with life and emotions. Yeah. We all have these inbuilt, like we all do this automatically. And yeah, I've lost a lot of that. And I think now I've regained that more recently, and to just enjoy the madness and turn it into creativity. I think I would say I'm happy. I'm all right. Yeah.
Love that. No, love that 100%. And to be fair, that answers the question, because it's like I realize coming at you and saying what would make you happy, like it's like that's me suggesting that you're not, and I don't know that.
I think I come across as that because I'm so aware of all the things that are wrong all the time, and that's like conditioning. But when I take the time to be creative and also let that hyper focus ADHD thing get going, like I just made a video the other week and it was a different type of video for me, different type of reel, but I really enjoyed doing it. And it was like the voiceover that I had, I was like, that's my voice. That's actually, I'm not trying to do anything or be anything. That's what I think is naturally funny. Yeah. And just allow myself that time. It's because it's so easy to just question everything before you even start, and you really do just end up doing nothing. And also some of the crazy stuff. So I'm like, as a woman, I go crazy several times a month. Ovulating is the first one. Everyone needs to know about this.
That should be titled Things Only a Woman Can Say.
Yeah, no, but we do. But it's not bad crazy. Yeah. It's not bad crazy. And crazy creates creativity. It's 3 CRs. You need to be, and I think sometimes when I accept that mentalness and I say the wrong thing, or I do, out of that, there's this rawness, and there's something I really, and I felt really, really, really like stale for quite a while. And there's something that's happened in the last few months where I don't feel that so much anymore. And it's accepting that, accepting the crazy, accepting the stuff that doesn't make sense. I remembered basically after my divorce, it was awful, but I felt so real and so alive because I was experiencing a range of emotions, and I was letting myself cry every day, and I was writing every day, and I missed that. And that's something I'm starting to get back, and it feels really, really good to, even when you're feeling hopeless, to feel alive. There's just something, love it.
Love that. You know, when you finish saying things, I try not to talk too quickly because I'm like, that's a great quote right there. That's going to make a lovely clip.
That's good. She's thinking like a producer. Look how quiet I am. Am I okay? Oh, God, I've not held it close enough at all. Sorry.
Nah, don't worry about that. Even if I have to do some after stuff. Yeah. But the last question I'd like to ask you is a question that I ask everybody on the pod. And that's what is the one bit of advice that you know you should take, but you just haven't taken it yet?
God. I mean, the advice I usually get from my boyfriend is you just need to chill out and get out of your head. Don't ever tell a woman that.
You heard it here first.
So that's usually what is in my head. Advice. No one's given me good advice. Honestly, my parents have given me such the worst advice.
But I mean, even if it's not advice that you've been given, but even advice that you give yourself.
The advice I give myself. So I had this when I was working through, I don't know where I came up with it, but it's genius. I was making a claim for some money from a company, and
no win, no fee.
No win, no fee. It was, and I remember, but there were lawyers involved and stuff, but I was acting on my own behalf. And I was really afraid because lawyers, and if you're ever dealing with lawyers, they will always tell you, you have no case, you're a piece of shit, fuck off, you're scum. And you will feel like, oh my God, they're right, I'm terrible, And I remember saying to myself, act from a place of power, not fear, and try and be that girl I was at school, arguing at my history A level with someone else in the class. Like, I gave a shit and I cared and I knew how to make a point, and where has all that gone, and why am I letting some, corporate lawyer like make me feel like shit when they're probably a bottom setter when they were younger anyway. And I hate the fact that I'm out in the world with bottom setters, but whatever, it's a different conversation. You can cut that out because I sound awful. But when you remember that, like, you were at school arguing with these people, you still have the aptitude, just read the stuff, research it. Anyway, what was my point? I basically went away, remember to feel powerful, act from a place of power, not fear. If fear is the thing that is governing you, you're not in your authentic space, you're not acting the way you want to act. And power, acting from a place of power can feel very, very scary, but you have to get rid of all the, if your motivation is fear. So when they came back to me like that, I was like, oh, I'm being bad, I'm doing this, what if, I don't know, there were just all these things wrapped up in it. And I was like, no, powerful, you're right. This is your right to be right. Probably cut out all that stuff. I'm
not cutting out any of that.
I cut all out. It's terrible. But yeah, act from a place of power, not fear. I have to try and remind myself to do that.
That's it. Genuinely, this has been one of my most favorite episodes that I've done so far. And the great thing is also you have created another Eulogise Me milestone, because you're the first woman I've had on the podcast. And that's not for want of trying. Like, trust me, I've reached out to many a woman. We just haven't been able to.
How are you phrasing it? It's like, hey, baby, what would you write in your eulogy?
You wanna come and chill with me in my
maybe
flat?
Maybe it sounds quite threatening. It's like, oh, you're going to kill me and then I'll write my eulogy.
Someone else made that connection. Oh. They were like, maybe you could start a podcast, like the podcast killer. I was like, oh, no, thank you. But no, this genuinely has been really fun, and I feel like I could have gone for even longer just talking to you, just chopping it up. What I would say is you ended your eulogy by saying that you don't necessarily sound like you're a lot of fun. No, you are a lot of fun. That you are a lot of fun. You just don't sound like it on paper. But if anything, I feel as though this podcast has proved that you genuinely are a lot of fun.
Thank you very much.
It's been really, really great having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I've really, really enjoyed it. Thanks, Ruben.
Oh, bye. Bless you. Thank you.